and what an incredible speech it was. What was your
Yeah,
takeaway?
it was just about an hour. I thought it was really well organized. He started out with his three big pieces of legislation: the one we've already passed, American Rescue Plan; the one they're working on now, the American Jobs Plan; and then, of course, finished up with the American Families Plan, and sprinkled all throughout there all the other things he wants to accomplish, which we can go over in a little more detail.
Yeah.
But wrapped it up with, the autocrats are betting against us. And we looked autocracy and insurrection and a pandemic in the face, and we didn't flinch, he said there at the end. And I thought that him tying autocracy into and putting it in stark contrast to the America that he's planning and trying to rebuild, I think was really effective.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was such an interesting underpinning of everything tonight was this idea that we've all been talking about for years, on your program and on mine, about how autocracy is trying to destroy democracy, and he for the first time really outlined to the American people what that really looks like and what that means. With the actual examples of what Xi might be doing, and how dogged he is about his determination to defeat America, and that's why he's presented all these policies that are so important to defeating that effort to destroy democracy. So even though a lot of people say it's really expensive and how are we going to pay for it, it's almost like, how can you afford not to do it? Because there's such important policies. And I thought the American Families Plan that you touched on there is transformational. I mean, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that. I thought it was just an incredible plan with huge potential to change America.
Yeah, let's see my notes here for the American Families Plan. If the first he talked about education and said he wanted to expand. Instead of 12 years of education, everyone would get you can see it on the screen there, 4 years of education, two pre-K and two community college free.
Amazing.
And then, yeah, and that's just stunning, especially when you combine it with his jobs plan and infrastructure and green new jobs, and how 75% of the new jobs that would be created by the jobs plan only require an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, whereas 90% don't require a college education at all. And so the whole thing, I think, is based on anti-trickle-down economics. What he said, bottom and middle out instead of trickle down. And everything sort of weaves into each other, right? Closing all these tax loopholes for families making above $400,000, reinvesting that just to pay their share, and reinvesting it in the country in these infrastructure plans that will create more jobs. That helps businesses because you're going to have a more educated electorate. You're going to have a more educated workforce. You're going to have higher wages. He brought the $15 wage in. That's going to generate, it's going to create jobs, new green jobs, so it saves the planet, but it also injects a whole ton of tax revenue into our system that has been wholly depleted, specifically over the last 4 years, and the loss of millions of jobs by the former guy there. Something else in the Families Plan, childcare. And you could see Elizabeth Warren give a fist pump there when they brought up the affordable child care. 12 weeks of paid medical leave for families was huge, and extend the child tax credits through 2025.
$3,000 per child. That's a significant amount. And 56% of American children will be lifted out of poverty. I mean, the transformational impact of something like that cannot be overstated. I mean, it'll change America. Along with all this education, along with everything, boy, we're looking at a completely new American future going forward.
Yeah, and to the idea of when we spend our tax dollars, all of that money is going to be spent on products made by Americans in the United States. And for example, he mentioned the wind turbine blades should be made in Pittsburgh and not in Beijing.
That's a good line.
It's going to stop jobs from being outsourced. It's going to, and it's really going to build the economy. We're going to have a 6% growth, and something really interesting that he brought up separately from these three main acts that he's going to do, which he, by the way, got the parliamentarian to approve additional budget reconciliation rounds so that he can do this without Republicans if he can get Manchin on board.
Right, Manchin's the most important person there, without a doubt.
But he talked about the Department of Defense's research agency outside the Department of Defense that works on research and development. And it used to be 2%. We would invest 2% of our GDP into technological research and development. Now it's less than 1%. And he wants that to go back, put that back online, but then also do it for the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and have that same kind of agency for our health programs. And then, of course, that led us into all the discussions that he wanted to have about healthcare, expanding Medicaid, negotiating, having Medicare negotiate drug prices, which saves money. And that money saved could go to expand Medicare. We could get more healthcare, free healthcare to the people without spending a penny. Everything's paid for. It's incredible.
It is incredible that, only by increasing, excuse me, only by increasing the tax rates for the richest Americans to what it was when George Bush was president, which is not a long time ago, but can't believe how much it shrunk. But it's that tax rate was 39%. And he's proposing to return that rate to people who earn $400,000 or above. And that will be enough to lift so many people out of poverty, to create so much more education in the system, to allow us to really challenge the future and to challenge our competitors in China and Russia. Wow, that's a dramatic move, and it's hard to disagree with. Although I noticed Mitt Romney in the sulking on the side there, and Ted Cruz sulking on the side there. But that was good to see those shots, because it's hard to disagree with his logic. If you're a Republican, it's hard to disagree.
I mean, any deficit hawk that wants us to pay down the deficit and the national debt has to realize we have to have more tax revenue and employed people to do that, which means we have to have more educated and healthy people to do that. So you invest in that. And again, you grow it from the bottom and the middle out and not trickle down. We know, and he mentioned, everybody knows trickle down economics doesn't work.
Well, the first $2 trillion from the last tax cut. That's the quote. That's the fact that he quoted there. $2 trillion in additional deficit from that last 2017 tax cut. I mean, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. No,
absolutely. And I think that did you catch? This is sort of off topic here, but Ted Cruz sort of nodded off. They had the camera on him, and I was looking, and I noticed that he was wearing his gun mask. And I think they put the camera on him because they were talking at that point about closing the loopholes for background checks and things like that.
And the ghost guns, I think, yeah.
And the ghost guns, and they put the camera on Ted Cruz, and he's nodding off, but he's wearing his gun mask. And so I thought that was a good representation there for Texas by Senator Ted Cruz.
Absolutely. I thought the other key moment, I saw Lauren Boebert doing the same thing, by the way, getting upset with the cameras, pointing, going to her when they were talking about guns. I mean, this is what you stand for. You should be happy about the fact that they're coming to you. I mean, this is what you're here fighting for.
If you don't want the camera on you when we talk about guns, don't appear on television with a giant wall of guns behind you.
Exactly. The plea to end cancer, I thought, was so significant. And, he's said it before, and he really means it. I truly believe he really means it. And it's been obviously a big passion of his. And it seems like he can get some sort of bipartisan support on that, at least.
Yeah, and I think so too. Even Manchin, they did look over to Manchin, and he was sort of nodding a little bit. We've tried this before and it's failed, particularly on the background check stuff. But one other thing that, on a personal note, that I noticed, and Zev, you can tell me if you've thought of this too. Whenever presidents address Congress, and I've seen so many of these, they always have little anecdotes. For example, like the grandma in South Carolina who told me this and told me that, or like Bob Jenkins in Rhode Island who said this and that. And every time, every president in the past, Bush, Clinton, Obama, other presidents, every time they use those anecdotes and like sort of tell those little stories, I'm always like, oh, yeah. It's always dragging out the anecdotes. He doesn't know who this person is, whatever. But with Biden, I truly believe he probably not only knows these people, but probably spent a bunch of time talking to them and listening to what they had to say. Like, that was the first time I found those little anecdotes believable. They didn't stand out to me as cringeworthy.
I agree. I think, especially the one with George Floyd's daughter, my daddy changed the world. I mean, boy, that's powerful. But that Biden actually does this. That Biden goes out of his way to talk to all these victims of violence, to spend time connecting with people, because he relates personally because of the death of his son, but also just because he's that kind of guy. that, it's not surprising to hear him say these things. And he knows these people so well that it sounds so authentic. I think it's a very good point. I mean, this is a remarkable speech. I mean, it's the most ambitious plan you could ever imagine putting together for any president. But it's unbelievable. If they can achieve even half of this, it would be insane. They might even achieve more because he is a good unifier. And there is in everything he's saying so much logic and so much appeal to middle America, to blue collar jobs and to healthcare and to the kind of stuff that you care about at the kitchen room table. Boy, that is really going to speak to Americans, and it's got to impact the Republican base. It just has to along the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got a really great approval rating. The American Rescue Plan has a huge approval rating, and I think that I'm confident he will get the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan passed because he's got budget reconciliation to do that. He might have to water it down a little bit for Manchin and Sinema, but that's far easier than trying to get 10 Republicans to come on board. But I tell you what, and I mentioned this in my other podcast today when I was talking to Andrew Torres, just the fact that a group of Republicans came to the White House to discuss the infrastructure plan, the American Jobs Plan, and brought in with them a $600 billion proposal. I've never seen any Republican or group of Republicans agree to spend $600 billion on anything except tax cuts for the wealthy. I thought that was pretty astounding. I'm not giving them any credit. Their plan is shit. I mean, guys, sorry. Do we?
That's okay. You're allowed. You're allowed. It's like your show.
But just to see any Republican who's, as what do they say in Shawshank, whose asshole doesn't close watertight as a frog when you ask him for money?
I hadn't heard that, but there you go. That's interesting.
I was like, okay, well, I mean, that's how you do it, right? You go big, and then you see if anybody will meet you anywhere. We're going to be able to do this without the Republicans through budget reconciliation, both of these two huge pieces of legislation, probably by the end of this fiscal year, which ends the end of September. And that alone, if they just do that, that's intense and amazing. But there's so many other, important things that cannot get passed through budget reconciliation. And we know we don't have the votes to eliminate the filibuster that we're going to have to push for. And we'll have to see if Manchin and Sinema, if we can get the Republicans to say no enough to common sense gun legislation, the Equality Act, things that everybody wants, closing the gun loophole, background checks, immigration reform. If we can get the Republicans to say no enough, which they will, by the way, every single time they'll say no, then maybe Manchin and Sinema will be like, all right, let's kill the filibuster for Voting Rights Acts bills.
Yeah, he might be able to do it without it. He might be able to do it without killing the filibuster. I think that there is an appeal that he has to his Republican senators or to the Republican senators where he might be able to get away with some of this. And the focus on China is such a good one, right? Because Republicans are so hawkish in that regard that they're not going to be, it's hard for them to argue against it. It's hard for them to argue, for China. They're not going to find themselves doing that. So he's done a really good job at, America needs a foil and America needs an enemy. And he certainly did a great job in identifying China as the key enemy. I'm going to take a quick break. And on the other side of this, LB is going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about Rudy Giuliani and what happened today, and also about his other comments in the speech about white supremacism. So that's coming up right after the break. Tonight's 100-day special event is brought to you by Helix Sleep. I've heard it from so many people. The one thing that's changed since January is their sleep. Not waking up worrying about what the president might have done or said or tweeted makes the world of a difference. I don't think I had a good solid night's sleep in 4 years. And it wasn't only the president. My 10-year-old mattress, which started life as a 12-inch foam mattress, had shrunk to an 8-inch mattress, and getting out of bed was often more of a slide than a bounce. It was time for a new mattress. Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? Changing the course of a country can take a village. Changing the course of your sleep takes a quiz. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/narrative. That's the way we spell narrative, N-A-R-A-T-I-V. That's helixsleep.com/narrative for up to $200 off and 2 free pillows just for you. And we're back. Here's the fabulous
Oh,
LB. Hi, LB. How are you?
hi, I'm okay.
I missed you today. I didn't get enough of your
I know,
time.
I'm sorry.
It's
It's a
okay.
little crazy over here. So,
I'm sure.
but I'm so happy. Allison, hi. Have
It's
we
okay.
It's
ever
so
done
interesting.
video? Have we only ever done audio? I can't figure this out now.
We've done this show narrative one time together. We've done.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
good. It
All
was
right.
good. And
Okay.
now it's time to
Yeah, I
reunite.
was
So
like,
I'm glad to have you both here. What did you think of the speech, LB? And then I want to get into Rudy because, I mean, that was such a big news tonight.
I know. Well, I got to be honest, guys. I couldn't watch all of it. I am in the middle of a massive thing I'm trying to get off my plate. But I saw enough of it, and I kept it on the background. And there are a couple moments where he grabbed my attention away from what I was doing. But what I love, I just want to talk about other things. I don't know if you guys started on this either, but I totally loved seeing two women standing there waiting for him. I was
Mhm.
like, oh man, it just struck me. That was amazing.
An
I'll
amazing
just never
moment.
forget that image. And then, and then it comes Joe and he's like, hey, everybody. Hey, let's do this speech thing. I mean, he just has this energy of, um, it's someone called it sort of Rockwellian, right? It's just sort of, he's just right there. He's just, he's a folksy guy by nature. He's not trying to affect that at all. He's just kind of Joe, right? And so I thought this, when the speech began, I was like, oh, he's just Joe in it, Hey, we're going to do this. We
Although
got this
remember a
going
year
on, and
ago?
then this thing over here, and then this thing. Yeah, it was great. It was very relatable. It's very easy. And then, so you almost don't know he's talking about these great big massive things that are just going to like turn the nation, I think, for the good. I think we all agree, for the good. So I just appreciate a president that um, is elegant in what he's saying, and it's easy and it's relatable, and you don't have to be a dumb shit reality star in order to get that to assume that personality and allow people to access you. Like
Absolutely.
you can actually be a really seasoned politician, and know what you're doing and understand your job. And
Although a
so,
year ago, when we were watching him on the campaign trail, people were like, "Oh no, he's low energy Joe," right? He was basically he wasn't even filling a room. Like remember, there's like five stragglers hanging out there, and now he's
I
just
know.
so impressive and so powerful, and is so in command. And look at all the stuff on his desk. There's like 1,000 policies that he's dealing with, and he's
Yeah.
got command of each and every one of those things. Which certainly the former guy, I try to mind saying his name, Trump. He certainly did no
Yeah.
command of any of these. So the contrast is remarkable. I mean, you can't hope for a better
No,
contrast.
you can't. No. Well, and also Trump just stacked everything with, it was a kakistocracy, right? It was just like the biggest idiot, the one that will do the most destruction, the person least qualified on the planet, Goomba, got jammed into some big important job and fucked up, whatever institution they were in charge of.
Right.
That was the plan. That was government. Government. But that's what a Kremlin asset that's born into the underworld of organized crime is going to do. So what do we expect?
Speaking of Kremlin assets, so Rudy
Yeah.
Giuliani,
Nice segue.
it
And
was
born into the world of organized crime. Don't
there.
forget
You,
that.
I mean, both
Yeah,
of those
don't
things,
forget
they've
that
been
about
buddies
Jim.
forever. I mean,
Yeah.
this was a remarkable thing that happened today, and I'm sure the timing was not coincidental because it was a message, and it was a very clear message. I mean, they're going after these guys,
Yeah.
and Rudy Giuliani is pretty close to the top, if not the very top, of at least one of those family trees. LB, you've been
Yeah.
so much at the forefront of presenting everybody this idea that we were dealing with mobsters here.
Yeah.
That must have been a bit of a moment for you. A little bit of a smile must have come to your face thinking about that, and what do you think the implications are for Mr. Rudy Giuliani?
Look, Rudy makes me laugh. I'm sorry. I find nothing. I have no empathy for him. I don't have anger. He's just this is the real clownery, the real dumb fuckery of Donald Trump is Rudy Giuliani. And he's a bad dude, you guys. He has been very, very sinister from day one. I probably just in his life, but with respect to that former presidency, this, people forget, Rudy was part of the whole sort of psyop that went on in 2016 of building that alt-right machine in there with Flynn Jr. He was doing that so much so. And he has this cyber security firm, which really, Zeb, I think you and I have talked about before. I think he just had a copy of Promise left over from when he was at the Justice Department. And he's just been, running around the planet selling that to a bunch of gangsters and calling it cybersecurity, right? I mean, this man, he dials with his right ball when his phone is in his pocket. I mean, he's just a mess. He's a mess. His security is a mess. His comms are a mess. I think because he knows the justice system so well, and because he's worked deals on both sides of the fence there at the highest levels, right? Southern District of New York, he did lead that commission trial, right? He did take down the heads of all 5 families of organized crime.
How convenient.
And then said, Allison and I have laughed about this before, and that says, I invented organized crime, right? He's just a mess. But he does understand how to work a deal. He does know how to have leverage over people. He's probably better at that than Donald even. And Donald is kind of really, really good. That's why Donald says he's a deal maker, is that he's just got so many deals with the Justice Department his whole life, right? And he's got dirt. And so these guys really think, like Jeffrey Epstein did, and like Ghislaine Maxwell, I think thought still to this day, that if they have enough dirt, if they can hand over some horrible spy, if they can hand over some fucketeer or some gangster, that they'll get out of whatever predicament they're in. I don't think that's on the horizon for Rudy Giuliani. He's going to have
a lot of crimes there. There's a lot of crimes that he's dealing with. A lot of crimes. Because it's not just the crimes that we think that he's involved in. Look, it's not just about dirtying up Hunter Biden or being involved in the Biden events in the last year. It goes back to a lot of corruption. And certainly, when you hear the names like Firtash and Kolomoisky involved in these things, you're like, okay, this is big time crime. We're not dealing with these low level gangsters.
No.
Allison, jump in there if you would.
Jump in, Allison. Yeah. I want to remind everybody before you do who Firtash is. Dimitri Firtash is. Dimitri Firtash was named by Bill. Oh God, I always forget his last name. Allison, the very low voiced, incredible ambassador that we had in Ukraine. Remember, and he came and testified in the first impeachment in front of Madam Schiss. What was his last name? I'm so sorry, everybody. I forgot.
I can't remember.
Okay. So while in his first stint over in Ukraine, he actually issued a report on Dmitry Firtash as the money laundering front for Semyon Mogilevich. That is Richardson, I think. No, it's not Bill Richardson. It's whatever. It's one of those names. So don't forget who Firtash is. Firtash is a front man, a money man for the biggest crime syndicate on the planet, coming out of Russia. That's who he is.
Yeah. Now, LB, I wanted to ask you, because the people who were targeted in this particular warrant, and that I think it's fascinating, right? Because we have Solomon, who is named, and if you remember, John Solomon wrote took the Firtash material and wrote it into. That's a FARA violation. We know that because of what happened with Gregory Craig in the Mueller investigation, right? When they whitewashed the Timoshenko report, with Van der Swan. So we've got Solomon, we've got Tonesik,
who, by the way, Van der Swan, the son-in-law. Literally the voice that called, right? Like literally the Russian terminology. The son-in-law of Khan, right? Which is the Alpha Group, which also were connected to Mogilevich, and we're, according to Khodorkovsky, right, who was that oligarch back in the early 2000s that Putin threw in the cage, remember? And he made him like he was the wealthiest man in Russia, and then he got exiled, and Putin took all his money because Putin was making all these moves on these oligarchs. So Khodorkovsky actually went on BBC in 2019, I want to say it is, and did this incredible interview where he said, Alpha Group and the mobsters behind Putin, Alpha Group and Putin, are clashing right now. Yeah. And that has been going on. And if we remember the Steele dossier, that's all in the Steele dossier as well.
Yep. And so we have Victoria Tonesing.
Yeah.
Who also got a knock on her door and we said, "Where did you take your phone? Okay, thanks, bye." And also,
and she's the lawyer for Firtash, right? I mean, she's been a long-term lawyer for Firtash, and also involved in seeding all this. Her and her husband, DeGenova, right? Is that his name?
DeGenova.
Have been seeding bad, GOP conspiracy theories for decades. I mean, going back to Bill Clinton. So
going back to Iran-Contra. Iran-Contra.
So
Rudy and DeGenova were responsible for leaking the Wiener laptop to the FBI New York field office, and we still haven't seen that report from the Inspector General. So we've got those guys in this particular warrant. And then we also know that they were searching for communications between Rudy Giuliani and Tonesing, Rudy Giuliani and Parnas and Fruman from the Parnas and Fruman Show, and
I love
communications between Rudy Giuliani and LB Zev. You know who this is, Derek Harvey. Remember aide to Nunes, who was
Nunes
who was running around.
So that's interesting. That goes back to the impeachment.
This goes back to spring. This is a group that was assembled in spring of 2019 around fraud guarantee. They were getting information from Firtash, who is funded by Mogilevich. But this is different to what we got reports last October that Rudy Giuliani was being investigated for, which I think he may already be indicted for, but I don't know yet, which is that's the intelligence operation of the Hunter Biden laptop with the guy in the Delaware Mac shop and the emails that were generated in Ukraine.
I can't. They're just running ridiculous ops with mobsters and spies.
It is.
That's what this is. That's how it is.
My question for you is, if they are just now serving this warrant, we know that it was blocked by Jeffrey Rosen. They wanted to do this earlier, but the previous guy's Department of Justice wouldn't let this warrant be executed. So Merrick Garland lifted the block, but you can't just execute an 8-month-old warrant, a 6-month-old warrant. You have to either prove that the evidence that you were looking for 8 months ago is still in the apartment and it's still in his phone, which it probably is, because let's be honest, Rudy ball dials people. Or they have to have some new piece of evidence.
That's right.
That did this. So there are so many investigations going on into Rudy Giuliani. This is just one of them. And to me, it implicates so many people. And it could potentially implicate so many people. We know that Rudy Giuliani met with Brian Benchkowski and Bill Barr to try to get Firtash off the hook for his extradition. We know, I mean, there's
Brian
so
Benchkowski, who before Donald Trump put him as head of the Organized Crime Division of the FBI, which is the mobster division, everybody, right? Was the lawyer for Alpha Bank.
Another Alpha Bank lawyer.
There's also, I mean, there's just the natural gas resources that these guys were bidding on. I mean, do you remember Parnas and Furman and Giuliani were involved in a partnership to get a natural gas pipeline license out of Ukraine?
Yeah.
So that's worth billions of dollars right there. And then the operation against the Yanukovych, the ambassador, that was involved $500,000 bribe. So there's there's stuff in there that is still very, very real. And Daniel Goldman was on TV today saying that this was the financial side of the impeachment trial. So that's probably a little bit of that they're looking at.
And you're right, Allison. There's I do think, and Daniel was saying this, something freshened that shit up. So I don't think it's just like, we know where the comms are. I don't know. Rudy did something. It's been a few months. Something freshened that up. So
the insurrection.
We'll see.
The
insurrection, isn't that interesting? The insurrection. Now let's go back to the Wiener thing. For a second.
But no one has reported. Just to wrap that up. I'm sorry. Nobody.
Go ahead.
Nobody has reported yet that there was anything in the warrant regarding any insurrection style stuff. That's just.
But we know that they're investigating. There's still 100 arrests coming on that.
We can tell by the names associated, but we actually really don't know what this is about. We're going to learn a lot more about it when
There are a lot of
don't quite
cooperating
know.
witnesses. One for sure, which I think we only know about because they accidentally filed it on the public docket when they meant to file it under seal. But there are
I
several
know.
indictments under seal in the insurrection with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. So we'll see what
Yeah.
goes with that. But you wanted to
Wiener,
go back and talk about
the Wiener
the Wiener
laptop.
laptop.
Well, I just want to talk about the Wiener, the person who actually took, just to bring everybody back around with how deep Rudy is in every single aspect of this sort of attack on America that was the last presidency. I don't know what else to think of that, right? Is that was Chuck Johnson, our favorite Holocaust denying troll, took credit for that laptop op. Now, he tends to boast about things. He does, but he does no weave. This guy's got a long history. And so there's Rudy in there, right? Yet again, messing around, right? Trying to run ops. Rudy thinks he's a spy. I'm sorry, you guys. He does. He thinks he's like an intelligence officer, and he
It's like
thinks he can do
watching.
this stuff. He thinks he can run around. And I will tell you something. I've known. I know one to this day still, a big intelligence officer, not that I'm related to even, that knows how to that actually has run this kind of stuff and did for past administrations. Rudy, I know who he thinks he's trying to be, right? When he's emulating these men and he thinks he can pull this stuff off. But really, he just ends up with his hands down the pants in a Borat film. I mean, it really is that. He really does just end up with paint on his face by a landscaping parking lot that's now trolling him on Twitter. That's Rudy.
He's
Yeah, I
gotten
have to
away with
wonder-
so much, so he must feel like he can get away with everything until now. I mean, until and look, let's be honest.
Yeah.
He can't really claim to be the lawyer of the president. I mean, he might try and he might succeed.
Oh, I
But
want
he's not
him
really
to
the
keep
lawyer.
doing it.
He's not
Keep
really
doing
the
it.
lawyer.
Let him go Michael Cohen all the way. Let's get individual one in some of this as well. I want to know what.
Oh, I'm
here's
sure.
here's the thing to really look at. This is what I'm keeping an eye on with this whole thing. Okay, I do believe it's about the money, and so something that might have happened or might have gotten triggered was a payment. And so that will freshen shit up real quick. If everyone remembers that there's a supposed falling out between Donald and Rudy towards the end of Donald's days in office around Rudy saying, pay me, what was it, $20,000 an hour? What was he looking for? Some astronomical
that,
amount of
yeah.
money. But
Okay, or
here's the
something.
thing. He always said, I work for free for the president. But Rudy
Just like
doesn't work for
Manafort.
free. Just like Manafort did. So who was paying Rudy?
For
Who's been
Tosh,
paying
through
him?
fraud
All of
guarantee,
course,
easy peasy,
of
lemon
course.
squeezy.
And
But also
who is, hang on, guys,
Yeah.
who is facilitating that payment? How does Rudy know how to do this? Rudy's done this in his past with other people. You can facilitate those payments through lawyers. That's what's going on, in my opinion, with Tonsing, right? Is that
Tonsing in Geneva.
yeah, she helped facilitate a payment from her client to Rudy Giuliani, and it's happened over their comms because they're morons. There's probably an email or a Bitcoin or something. There's something.
You're right. You're right.
I have
That's
a
probably
question for
exactly
you,
what it
Elsie.
is.
I have a question for you, LB and Zev, because we know that when you go in and you raid a house like this, we learned this from Cohen and Manafort, those raids of the past. We know that what will have to happen is when they go through all this evidence, the court will have to appoint a special master, or the FBI has a taint team to go through to make sure to separate all of the stuff that's attorney-client privilege. And Rudy Giuliani's an attorney, Victoria Tonsig, and those payments were made by an attorney, and probably all that money was managed and paid in legal fees. However, tell us about that lovely thing called the crime fraud exception, would you?
Yeah, so you can't be committing a crime as a
And
lawyer. You can't and sort of say attorney-client privilege protects us from this. You can't. You just because you have a law degree or someone, even you have a client that's paying you, or you're doing pro bono service for the president of the United States because he apparently has no money. You still can't use that agency as an attorney and the privilege that you're awarded that to shelter and cloak the crimes. Now, guess where this got invented, everybody? Guess who invented
The
this?
mobsters invented
Rudy
this.
The
Giuliani?
mobsters invented it. No,
The
Morris
bag
Shanker
man.
invented
It's the
it.
bag man, right?
Morris Shanker invented it. I actually was about to do a tweet today about how Rudy's trying to be Morris Shanker and he can't. So just to give you guys some old mod history. So Morris Shanker was the attorney for just about every mobster on the planet back in the 30s and 40s. But Sidney Korshak, who was like sort of an original major mob boss that no one ever talks about except me. I'll end up talking about this motherfucker for a while, fairly soon. And what Morris did was he used that attorney-client privilege to also be a mafia boss, right? And eventually got nailed for the frauds that he was running with these guys. He was a part owner in the Sands Casino. He was like doing deals with Howard Hughes under the table. There was like intelligence operations running through all those casinos. So this kind of mixed up world of mafia attorneys, right? Or criminal attorneys that are also criminals that are trying to both simultaneously run rackets and work deals with the government because they have one foot in with the government as well. And so they think, okay, I can get off because I'll hand you somebody bigger, or I'll hand you somebody dirtier, or I'll give you the inside scoop on some big investigation you're doing into that might have counterintelligence, tentacles into it. It sounds like this big fantasy world, you guys, but that's really what they do. That's really that's what Leslie Wexner did for years. This is what these guys do. Okay. And when they have the cloak of attorney, they try to get away with that privilege. And the mobsters that they're doing business with think, oh, it's my attorney. No one will talk to my attorney. It takes you right to Tom Cruise in The Firm and how he had to do the deal at the end of the movie with the syndicate bosses, right? Of like, I'm your attorney. I'll just be this floating ship that never moors, right? Because I can keep all this with me. As long as he's also not committing a crime or using that shield to commit a crime. Michael Cohen committed a crime. He was doing dirty business. And Rudy, I think we will probably find out that Rudy was too.
I think we will. And I think, this is reverberating in Mar-a-Lago, I'm sure, quite in a big way tonight, and also in the Kremlin. I mean, this is the Kremlin's mobsters. These are their guys. So, if Putin's not having a good day knowing that this is going down, because, there's communications that are not far away from him in terms of this.
Well, sometimes I think Putin is watching what Giuliani does and it's just like, oh God.
Right.
because Giuliani's trying to be, like you said, trying to be one of these spies. Just like it reminds me of Jacob Wohl and Berkman trying to pull off the what Cambridge Analytica was doing with the robocalls and the Rust Belt states.
Yeah.
But something else, LB, I wanted to bring up too, and I find
Allison,
this.
can you hold on that? I got to take another break, and then we'll get on the other side and we'll ask some more if LB can stick around. Can you, LB?
I'll stick around for Alice.
Okay.
Yeah,
this
is gonna be up late.
We'll be right back, guys.
All right.
So that was meant to be an ad, but it's not. I can tell. Okay. I don't know what happened to it. I'll look for it.
Wait, Allison, what were you asking?
Yeah, that's the question. And I'll see if I can find the ad in the meantime.
Aside from crime fraud exception, there is something called third party exception, where if you bring a third party in who's not an attorney, it blows up your attorney-client privilege. And I just want to think that's why I think it was important that they pointed out they were looking for communications with Derek Harvey and communications with Parnas and Fruman, because those three are not attorneys. Right. And so if Giuliani told Parnas and Fruman to tell Harvey something, or vice versa.
This is a monstrous thing that they're going to start bringing down. And clearly this is a signal to all of them that they are bringing him down. I mean, they're not stopping here. I mean, for them to go ahead and do this today, on this day, was a real signal. And clearly it's a strong message that Merrick Garland is sending.
You think it was a signal? You think it was purposefully done today on the day of the...
I do. I don't think there's any coordination between the White House and Merrick Garland. I don't. No. I absolutely believe there's no coordination, but I think Merrick Garland's not he's an astute man. And I don't think it's a bad idea to make sure that they realize, at least in the first 100 days, that they're serious about their commitment to an independent DOJ. I think there's a real possibility that this was a strongly thought out, intended message to send to the organized criminals. no proof of that, but I just think that's wouldn't surprise me. Certainly wouldn't surprise me.
Whether intentional or not, it's a nice little package. So I'll take it.
True.
Right? I'll take the package. I actually think it could have been a time sensitive thing. I think there was some kind of transaction that occurred. They clearly got permission to go do it, and they just went and they moved before. Even though Allison and I had a little exchange on Twitter today of like, oh my God, there's no way that Rudy could figure out how to like burn his devices, or I don't know, maybe he just threw everything in the toilet like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas, or like Larry Bracco putting all the cocaine.
He's got a file called
maybe, I don't know.
Like he's got a file called Evidence of Crimes. I mean, his company was called Fraud Guarantee.
Oh yes, exactly.
And you guys, we haven't even gotten to Turkey and Halkbank and the Iranian money.
And Libya, we got the Libyan oil thing. That's huge.
The Libyan oil thing. I mean, this guy's just up to his eyeballs. It's just, I love it so much.
It just was a good day.
Yeah,
I don't think it was. I don't think it was coordinated or on purpose. Personally, I think they just.
Really? I mean, come on. This is such a. This is theater, right? They do it all. They do it for a reason. They don't just do it.
I don't think so. I don't think this. I don't. But
maybe I'm so cynical. I spent too many years as a journalist to realize that this is how they do this. But I mean, it's just for them, they realize it's an optics thing, and they want to send the right message to the mob. They want to put the right message in front of people tonight before Biden gets to have to answer questions about what's going on with prosecuting Donald Trump. They don't want him to have to answer that many tough questions on that tonight. So they do this thing in the morning, make sure that they realize that there's still a clear message to everybody that the investigation continues.
That's an interesting theory. But I'll give you the reasons why I don't think it was. First of all, it's the sovereign district of New York, right? They take no, I think that they are working independently, and I think Biden would keep his promise to do that. Unless they're scheming in the Southern District of New York to be like, wouldn't it be funny if we did that?
You can have. I'm sure there's no coordination. I'm sure the White House is not getting involved in the decisions, but I do think that there's possibly, astute enough people politically inside the SDNY and within the DOJ.
Yeah, but you don't.
This is a good signal. They're a political organization too, ultimately.
But if you have this search warrant, you don't hang on to execute it until a very cool politically prominent day. And that's the only one of the only reasons I think that it just
would they not have waited? They would have waited for Barr. They waited for Merrick Garland to get in because they needed to overturn the decisions, right? So they needed some.
Well, okay. So let me chime in. There was some. I do believe that there was some waiting because there was a lot of. I do. Well, this is an assumption, but I think we're going to find out. And there's reporting that points to this, that there was a lot of interference from Barr himself, and a lot. And so if you're sitting there going, well, the time's not running out on the crimes, your Justice Department officials, he was trashing them, shitting them. Absolutely. But something happened. I do believe that. Something happened, Zev. Something happened to freshen this particular thing up. And the whole stack of stuff they've got to deal with. Something happened around this that then allowed them to act. And so that's...
there was a raid on Kolomoisky's offices. It could have been the other way.
Right?
There was a raid on Kolomoisky's offices, and they raided a lot of data from there, a lot of financial records. So they could have been looking through all this and said, "Hey, look what we found. Look at all this records of money being passed through here."
And then you got to go to a judge, and then you got to get a thing, and then you got to. There's a lot of hurdles to clear. And you can't sit on it once you've cleared them. You could, but. You got to move.
I don't think this is politically motivated. Don't get me wrong. I just think that there's political thinking going on into the optics of it because they have to do it. They're political organizations and they're also investigating big political figures. I mean,
it would be like hitting a bullet from 500 yards away with another bullet to try to get this search warrant to line up on the day of the address to Congress. Personally, that's what I think. In my limited
some people
knowledge,
are sharpshooters. We can disagree. We can agree to disagree because I actually have no proof of this. This is just my guessing.
Right. We're all speculating.
I can't play this ad because it won't play, so I'm going to just include it in the podcast because that's where it's also going to be airing. And let's keep talking if you want to, but I don't know if you've got to run, LB. We can keep yakking.
I got it. What time is it? Oh,
I've got
that's
a few
all right. I'm
minutes
just going to
left.
be doing coffee all night here.
Oh no, we have to go. This is the end of the show. Look at the time. It's so much fun hanging out with you that I didn't realize it was already time to go. So I thought it was like another half an hour, but no, apparently that's it. So that's the end of the show. Allison Gill, thank you so much for being here tonight from the Daily Beans podcast and Muller She Wrote to the best things out there. And LB, thank you for being here tonight. And we'll be back Friday with the after show. Thanks very much for watching tonight on Narativ. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.